D.C. Good morning, Congressman.
Well, good morning, Ed. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Well, we wanted to try to get you on for just a few minutes, Congressman Nunnelee, so you could straighten us out on what's happening in Washington, D.C. and help us sitting out here in the hinterlands to understand what is going on with the government shutdown, or as some are calling it, the government slim down. Where are we at with this?
Well, I don't know that I can tell you exactly where we are. When I heard you were going to have a psychologist, I thought that might be beneficial for me just to stay on the line. But let me try to summarize real quick where we are. I don't think any of us had as our objective a government shutdown. We recognize there are some very serious problems, and we want to avoid that. But we also recognize that the strongest opponents, or the strongest proponents, the ones in favor of Obamacare, are now saying it's going to be a train wreck to implement. And we've got an obligation to the American people. If we see a train wreck happening, we have to do everything we can to avoid that train wreck. And so as the September 30th federal budget deadline came upon us, in the House of Representatives, we sent a proposal to the U.S. Senate that said we want to defund Obamacare. Let's move forward. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I do think it's important. There was this notion citing Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the Constitution that says no funds can be drawn except by appropriation by the Congress, and the House originates the appropriation. So if the House simply says no, then Obamacare is defunded. Well, we saw the government shut down yesterday, and Obamacare went forward. And the reason it is because when Obamacare passed in 2009, it was pre-funded. The way I describe it, it takes two signatures on a check to issue a check by the federal government, the House and the Senate. And in 2009, before I got here, the House and the Senate signed checks as far into the future as we can see funding Obamacare. What we want to do is put a stop payment order on those checks. And in order to put that stop payment order, it takes the same two signatures. Well, the House signed it, but the Senate wouldn't. So we sent that defund stop payment order down there, and the Senate rejected it. Then we sent a follow-up proposal. Said, okay, if you want completely defund it, let's delay it for a year. And the Senate wouldn't go along with that. So the final proposal we sent, we did that late Monday night, was we said, Mr. President, you have already issued an exemption for large businesses. You've already issued multiple exemptions for labor unions. And finally, you've created a special exclusion in the law that does not exist. It's going to exempt members of Congress from Obamacare. So what we want to do is give that same exemption to American families. Let's delay the individual mandate for a year. And, oh, by the way, no special treatment for members of Congress. And we sent that down to the Senate. And Harry Reid would rather protect members of the U.S. Senate, make sure they don't go on Obamacare, and he's willing to shut down the government to do that. So the last response we got from Harry Reid, he said, I'm not even going to talk to you. We will not negotiate until you vote exactly the way we want you to vote. Once you pass what we tell you to pass, then we'll negotiate. And, Ed, I don't answer to Harry Reid. I answer to 700,000 people in Mississippi, and that's just not the way you do things. So our strategy going forward, we did pass unanimously, and the Senate agreed unanimously to pay the troops. I think that's a good measure. Let's don't get them caught up in this political bickering back and forth. Last night, we attempted to pass a bill that said, okay, let's don't get these veterans tied up in this issue. Let's go ahead and make sure we continue to pay veterans benefits. Now, the way it was done, it took a 2/3 vote. We weren't able to get that. I predict the Democrats opposed it almost overwhelmingly. We're going to come back today and do it with a 50% vote, and I predict that we will pass it. We're going to send that to the U.S. Senate. We've also said, look, let's don't get the national parks caught up in this deal. Let's go ahead and fund them. And then I think we're going to go forward and say the National Institute for Health. We're going to identify those aspects of government that have nothing to do with Obamacare. We're going to say fund them, and we're going to see how much the Senate is willing to shut down government in order to protect this special exemption for members of Congress. And so I think that's what we're going to be doing going forward.
We are talking to Congressman Alan Nunnelee of the 1st District of Mississippi, Republican congressman. Congressman, let me ask you this. I know a lot of people are talking about the shutdown / slim down and the Obamacare train wreck that's coming. But let me ask you a question that I really want someone to answer, and that is, you mentioned President Obama granting these exemptions, delaying the implementation of the employer mandate. Is it legal for the president to simply willy-nilly decide which parts of a law will be enforced and which can be postponed according solely to his discretion? Is that legal? Has that been done by other presidents?
No, it's absolutely not legal. And I think it's the clearest indication that President Obama, if not by his words, by his action, acknowledged that this is going to be a train wreck. And when he carves out a delay for big businesses, carves out a delay for unions, but the most telling is when he carves out a delay for his own staff and members of Congress. That tells you it's going to be a train wreck.
Well, we're all, I don't know whether we're all riding on the train or we're all watching it like in a movie, but the launch of Obamacare yesterday, the exchanges at least, had all sorts of glitches. Now the Democrats are saying, well, we knew this would happen. It's a big program. These things will iron themselves out. And I think probably a lot of people will nod to that explanation, knowing how difficult it is sometimes in their own businesses or the place where they work. When there's, the internet goes down and you have this glitch and that glitch, somebody comes along, you call IT and they fix it. So I think people are probably nodding their head at that explanation. But what are you hearing in Washington, D.C.? Are these just temporary glitches from, that needs the care of some IT folks, or is this a major systemic problem that will probably go on for months? What's your take?
Well, Ed, I would suggest to you that those families who've seen their hours cut back to below 30 hours can't call an IT individual to get them to fix that problem. Those businesses that are hovering around the 40 to 45 employee range and who are scared to hire additional employees to cross that 50 threshold, and the families that are not getting jobs because of that can't call the IT department and get it fixed by dealing with a computer crash. Those small businesses that have seen their insurance premiums skyrocket, despite the fact that President Obama said they're going to be lowered by $2,500 a person a year. They can't get that fixed by calling the IT department. So I think it's a much bigger problem than a computer crash.
Well, Congressman Nunnelee, we also have, I know we just got a couple more minutes with you, we also have here in a couple of weeks the debt ceiling issue. Is that, are we going to even be capable of dealing with that while this other is going on? What happens when the debt ceiling issue raises its head again?
My gut is that they're all going to get fixed together. And we've got to sit down and start talking about this. Now, I understand the American people elected the president. They elected the United States Senate. And we've got to work with them. But they also have to realize that we're in a duly elected position as well, and they've got to work with us.
And you expect that that will happen within the next couple of weeks because of the debt ceiling issue?
I'm not going to predict where this may go. I think this has gotten much broader than merely Obamacare. I mean, when the President of the United States says, okay, I'm willing to negotiate with Russia, I'm willing to negotiate with Iran, but I'm not going to negotiate with the elected representatives of the American people, that's a problem. And so I think this is much bigger than just the Obamacare issue.
We're talking to Congressman Alan Nunnelee, who is representative for the 1st District of Mississippi. He is talking with us from Washington, D.C. Congressman, thank you for all you're doing and for sticking with that mess in D.C. A lot of people are very discouraged about our Congress, but we know there are a lot of good people, we should say, on both sides of the aisle, and we hope that that both sides of the aisle can come together and compromise and do what's best for the American people. Thank you for your time, sir, and what you're doing up there.
Well, and thank you to American Family Radio for the ministry you have to family, but also for the impact that your listeners have, because I can assure you, when they call their members of Congress office, even if they don't talk to the member themselves, your calls make a difference. And thank you for the work that all of American Family Radio is doing.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.